Welcome to another edition of MoxieTalk, where we give you an intimate look into the courage, character, and defining moments of today's most inspiring individuals. I'm Kirt Jacobs, host of MoxieTalk, where previous guests have included leaders from the world of politics, business, culinary, sports, entertainment, art, law, community activism, and philanthropy. Today, our 434th guest in our series, we welcome retired professional wrestler and co-owner of Ohio Valley Wrestling, drumroll, the one and only Al Snow, whose real name is Allen Ray Sarven, a well-known figure in the professional wrestling industry, both as a performer and as a trainer. He was born on July 18, 1963 in Lima, Ohio. Snow has had a long and varied wrestling career for major organizations such as WWE, which is the World Wrestling Entertainment, and ECW, which is Extreme Championship Wrestling, and TNA, which is Total Nonstop Action Wrestling, among others. Now, Al is perhaps best known for his time in WWE during the late 1990s, early 2000s, where he was recognized for his charismatic personality and in-ring abilities. He will talk about this extensively, but he was also famous for his gimmick with head, a mannequin head that he carried to the ring and used as part of his act, which became a huge hit, understandably, with fans. In addition to his wrestling career, Al Snow is a respected wrestling trainer. He took over OVW, Ohio Valley Wrestling, a Louisville, Kentucky-based wrestling promotion operation that has served as WWE's and Impact Wrestling's developmental territory. And under Snow's leadership, OVW has continued to be a prominent training ground for up-and-coming wrestling talent, contributing significantly to the development of future stars. In fact, Snow was featured heavily in the 2023 Netflix docuseries, What Else?, called Wrestlers. And following the series release, OVW had their first Thursday night sold-out show in 8 years. Al has 6 children, and in 2017, he married the lovely Jessica Goucher, and in 2021, Snow saved the life of a child from an ocean riptide at Santa Rosa Beach, which says to me that wrestlers do have a heart. Welcome, Al. We are humbled and honored you took your valuable time to be with us today on Moxie Thanks for being here.
I really appreciate you having me. I'm really was excited about coming down here and doing this. It's really, I'm really looking forward to it.
Yeah, so my son and I, and a lot of people that'll see this might have learned about you the first time through the Netflix series, Wrestlers. We turned it on, didn't know what to expect. My son didn't really even know, he's 12 at this particular time. He didn't really know even anything about wrestling. He didn't grow up in the era of, Dirty Dutchman and Jerry Lawler, there's a million names.
Jimmy Valiant.
Yeah. Was it Jimmy Hart, the manager, and Lance Russell, the MC. And so he got hooked, and we watched the whole thing, and he looks at me, and he goes, "You're welcome," and he says, "Can you get him on your show?" And I said, "If he's willing, we'll talk." I said, I think he'll come on down, I hope. Yeah. I said, "People are strange," I said, "but I think Al will do it." And then I met you after the show out at Davis Arena, and that night was sold out too. Yeah. And you said, "Yeah, we'll look into it," and here we are.
Here we are.
So what drives you to excel in this area of wrestling? I mean, it's a unique career path. The last I checked, you can't major in wrestling. At least when I was coming up, maybe you can now. Yeah. I know you've had an academy, which we'll talk about.
I don't know. A lot of people have asked me that question over the years. And I think honestly, like for a pursuit such as this, or something like this too, like if you could answer why you're doing it, you probably really shouldn't be doing it.
Yeah.
Because a lot of these types of vocations are ones that are pursued out of a sense of passion, of drive.
Amen. Yeah.
And let's face it, it's usually, the odds are you're probably not going to get rich doing whatever it is you're really passionate about wanting to do.
Yeah, I think it's kind of God's little joke on everybody. Yeah. I want to give you this great talent or passion, but yeah.
Yeah, you're probably not going to make a whole lot of money. But you do it and you enjoy it, and then as such, like I've been blessed. I mean, I'm coming up on, this May will be my 41st anniversary of being a professional wrestler, and luckily, nobody's figured out. I have no clue what I'm doing. So,
Well, I would argue you do from afar, but I understand what you mean.
but you know, I've been very blessed. I can't even say lucky. I've been very blessed because I grew up in a little small town in Ohio called Lima, and you know, everybody, when I first was like declared I wanted to do this, were like, "You're out of your mind. You know, you're never going to do it." And I started when I was 18, and as a result, I've gotten to meet. I mean, like, get to do something like this. Yeah. I'd never in a million years would have had an opportunity to meet you, do things like this. I've been in 39 or 40 different countries, I think. I've been on 6 of the 7 continents in the world, and that's all because I decided to go run away with the circus and fake fight other men in my underwear for money. So
he said it, I didn't. You could have thought it, but he said it. I want to ask this question: what's the largest crowd you've ever performed in front of? Because you've been in a lot of events.
Well, I've been in front of 2 people on a bale of hay, legitimately. I've wrestled in a goat barn where they've literally just had a goat show and they were picking up goat feces and throwing it at me. And then I've been in stadiums in front of 68, I think 72,000 was probably one of the biggest ones.
What is that moment like? I mean, we've got a lot of ground still to cover, but I mean, or do you just kind of get in a
It's
zone?
all the same. It's all the same. It really is. It's whether there's, for me, whether there's 68 people there or 68,000, there's the same, you know, anticipation and the same stress that, oh, I've got to go out there and make sure that even if there's 68 people, I got to make sure they get what they paid for. You know, they have that experience. And sometimes, I got to be honest, sometimes it's easier with 68 people than it is for 68,000, because like one time we were in the Sky Dome in Toronto, and I think that was about 68 or 70,000 people. And it was so weird because you had to physically slow down what you were doing, because for the audience, you'd do something and then you'd literally feel and hear the reaction go out and then have to come back, you know, and you had to wait for it to come back and go, okay, let's get going. So, you know.
Yeah, I never thought of that, as a performer.
Yeah, those more intimate places, quite honestly, they're the energy's a lot greater and a lot more confined, and where you get in those big stadiums, I mean, then you got to just kind of wait. Here it comes. Okay, now we can go forward.
Well, Davis Arena's like that. It's almost in your face.
Yeah.
I mean, which I like.
And there's no bad seat in the place. I mean, it really is a great facility for a live event.
How many roughly events have you participated in as a wrestler? I mean, not as a producer or promoter, or that too, I guess.
I have no idea. I mean, when when I first started in 1982, you know, you wrestled almost every night, but 7 nights a week. So, and you were always trying to work. So pretty much, you know, you tried to be on the road 365 days a year. So, you know, it got a little crazy. It would wear you out, but you know, I've probably done thousands, I would imagine, over the years.
Yeah, I would say so. Yeah. Just by that length of time.
Yeah.
The amount of times you fought. So I've kind of got an organic question I just want to ask you, as someone who's never wrestled like you have, and people watching this that may be interested in doing it, or like me, just an avid fan.
Yeah.
You know, I know they call it choreograph. You know, there's a lot that goes into the matches, but you know, we're human. We get angry. We have egos. You know, have you ever had, and it's kind of a twofold question, have you ever had a situation where it was all worked out and for whatever reason you guys got mad at each other and it became something else, or they didn't follow what you all had decided to do and it became this whole other thing and everyone loved it? So it's kind of a twofold,
both,
I guess. Yeah,
both.
I can imagine.
Yeah, that happens a lot more than a lot of people think. Mm-hmm. It's not choreographed. So
yeah, sorry. But,
well, no. I mean, that's fine. It doesn't, you know, and people don't have to understand that, you know, professional wrestling, in the sense of there's only one thing that's not real about it, and that is the intent. We know hey, you're going to win, I'm going to lose, we're going to go about this amount of time.
Sharing
But
that, yeah.
everything physically in that ring is quite, unfortunately, it's quite real.
Yeah.
It's simply the intent behind it. So, you know, for instance, you know, everybody's like, oh, the ring's a trampoline or a mattress. And let me tell you something, I wish it was.
Yeah.
That thing, I hate it. There was a physics department at a college in Connecticut. I can't remember what college it was. And this was years ago. And they did a physics study where they were evaluating and studying the impact of every time a professional wrestler, and I'm not talking like a big landing or anything, I'm saying whenever you just fall on the mat, and they calculated that the impact was equal to a 22-mile-per-hour car accident. So
if you hit wrong,
even if you hit right, it's still, it physically hurts, and you know it takes its toll. But you know, you get conditioned to it, you get used to it. So. And
then the last question for the moment, in terms of your experience as a professional wrestler, have you ever been severely hurt?
Oh God, yeah. Yeah,
I mean, if you want to name the list of surgeries or injuries, feel free. I was just, because I want people to really see this part of your journey, if it's okay.
Where do I start? I've broken my nose 13 times, had it broken.
It looks great, I'm serious. I would never know if you...
A little off to the side. The last one, I pushed it back myself. Severely dislocated my right shoulder, separated my left. I've had an assortment of cracked, bruised, and a couple broken ribs. I had a cracked tailbone. That one hurt.
I've bruised mine, so I can only imagine.
Broke both hands. Have between fingers and toes, I think I'm up to 28 or 29.
Getting up in Evel Knievel territory.
Tore my groin. I've tore whatever that muscle is, runs down there. It snapped. Dislocated my hip. I've had several times had a severe pelvic shear. That's where, because your pelvis is in three pieces. I found that out. And where they go up and then like this. That's painful.
How do you put that back together? It takes a while.
We had a guy in WWF at the time, or WWE. He was not a chiropractor. He was what they call a bone cracker. And he laid me on the floor. This legitimately I was in so much pain for like 2 or 3 months. And he put the soles of my feet together, put them into his navel. He leaned forward, grabbed him in the back of my head, and he kind of rocked back and forth, and he brought my knees, and they would go out, and then he went boom, and it went off like a gun.
And it went back in.
And it went back in. And the relief was amazing. And everybody in the locker room was like, what did you do? Because they all heard it, you know, they all jumped like, what'd you do to him? And I just lay there and I was like, oh, thank God.
It always amazes me how people know these little tricks, you know, like where do you learn that?
I don't know. And I've broke my neck twice. Wasn't aware of that until they did a CAT scan for something else. And I've had numerous concussions, and I don't go into it a lot, but I've had 2 minor strokes from head injuries. So, you know,
But I mean, if I didn't know you and I didn't know all about your background, and I met you out at a networking event or whatever, I'd never in a million years think you'd had all that happen.
Yeah.
I mean, you look pretty good, man.
Well, you know, you look even better in the dark. So you shut all these lights off, I get really handsome.
Al, who do you credit most influential in your life? It could be more than one, personal, professional.
My mother and father. I mean, they instilled in me the things that have carried me forward. The older I've gotten, the more, we always end up becoming our parents. You know what I mean? As much as we fight it and we resist it, and boy, some days I go, I know where that came from. And but I'm proud of it. I was lucky to have the parents I had.
Yeah, same. Mine are gone, and
yeah. My father is gone, and my mother's still here. So, great. Yeah, she's still running the road. She's a real estate agent in Dayton, Ohio, and she, calls me. You don't call enough. I could be laying here dead on the floor and nobody knows.
That was my mother.
Yeah, but then I'll call and she'll be, I got to go. I don't have time.
Right, exactly. Yeah. Which way do you want it?
Yeah, which way you want it?
I love that. But a quick aside, it resonated with me, when we do the edits, the post-production on these, I'll watch myself and I'll see my father, mannerisms and stuff, and I'll forget that I'm watching myself, and I'll be like, that's Dad. And that's a rewarding, reassuring feeling that he's always with you, I guess. What do you consider to be the most defining moment of your life, Alan? Again, it could be more than one, personal and professional.
I don't know. I don't know if I've had that yet.
Okay.
And maybe I might have and just didn't realize it.
Right.
I didn't have that epiphany at the time. I don't know. I think, probably when I was, and I disagree. I mean, I with myself. When I was 14, your life is defined by the decisions you make. And I made a decision that I wanted to be a professional wrestler when I was 14. And once I had made that decision, there was no looking back. And then that's what's led me here today. A decision that I made when I was 14 years old has brought me sitting here across from you.
And we'll come back to that because we've got a question that refers to that. What do you consider to be your biggest professional triumph? And again, it can be more than one, personal as well.
I think the length of time that I've been able to do what I've been able to do.
What is the average?
It varies. I mean, I don't think that there's any one set time frame. I think that now the windows are a lot tighter, a lot shorter than what they were years ago. I think that, for me to be able to have lasted as long as I've been able to last and still, I feel, to be in some way being relevant and still giving back and in a positive way has been pretty much a big accomplishment for me anyways.
What does Al Snow consider to be the largest or hardest life lesson you've ever had to learn? We've already been through your injuries and surgeries, so maybe that was it, I don't know.
No, I've had lots of life lessons, because I've made lots of mistakes. And I think probably the most valuable one I've learned is that is to be honest with myself. We all every day to some degree or another lie to everybody. But the one thing I've just come to accept is that I don't lie to me. I know my shortcomings, I know my positives, I know my negatives. I know that no matter what I do and no matter how I do it in somebody else's story, I'm the villain. And I just accept it. That's fine. I don't mind. The second thing, I think, three things. One, that. Two, the most valuable thing in life is respect, period. People say, you can't love somebody unless you love yourself. Yeah, you can. Lots of people don't love themselves. They love everybody. But you can't genuinely love somebody unless you respect them. And you can never respect someone unless you respect yourself. And
I agree with you.
And the only way you'll ever respect yourself is you be honest with yourself. And then the third thing is the most valuable thing you'll ever own is your name. No other thing ever will mean as much as your name and your reputation.
And in this age of technology and things, it can be gone faster
in a heartbeat.
In a New York minute.
Listen, I was getting canceled before cancel culture started.
Right, exactly.
That lady wrote a letter to the Atlanta Constitution about my action figure, and they yanked that thing right off the shelves. So I was a national news event for about 2 weeks.
What was the issue with that, since you brought it up? Was it the way it looked or something?
Well, no, an assistant professor of all things of communications at Kennesaw State College in Georgia walked into Walmart at that time, and and it was a perfect storm. She walked in with her child, saw my action figure, which, if anybody doesn't know, when I was a wrestler, I was carried a mannequin head with me and spoke to it, interacted with it, and without doing, because why would we want to do this, any actual homework or research, because we're a professor of communications of all things. Why would we actually want to delve into and really find out the facts? Now let's just jump to conclusions. And then let's go a step further. Let's espouse that opinion in a public forum, without ever actually finding out what's really going on with it. That should be fine. Should work out. I mean, the Salem witch trials were great that way. And it was much the same case, because she looked at the action figure and they had a popped off Barbie doll head. It wasn't even it wasn't like, where it was made like, it was literally just a, when you were a kid and you took your sister's Barbie doll and popped the head off in the package. Okay. And see, she then thought that was a decapitated woman's head. And then in the letter to the Atlanta Constitution actually said that my action figure was a training manual for future spousal abusers. Wow. And listen, if you have bought my action figure and you grew up to beat up your spouse because of it, you have other problems other than just my action figure. Yeah, I think you're probably going to have other issues, and you might need a lot of medication. But I'm not there to judge, and because wrestling was very, very prominent and very mainstream, popular at the time. Mm-hmm. Of course, the Atlanta Constitution is only in the business of selling newspapers and not really disseminating actual information. Right. So they printed it, and then Walmart saw it, and they immediately went, my action figure is number 5 on the 23 or 24 things they will not sell at Walmart because it's a concern safety for the community. Granted, you can still go to Walmart and buy a rifle or a gun and a hunting knife to do things with, but don't you get my action figure. Pregnant Barbie was number 1. I think I'm number 5, so beat me out.
I'll just leave that there for the audience to disseminate. I'm not going to touch that one. What do you consider to be the biggest risk you've ever taken now? And again, did it pay off? And it could be more than one, personal or professional.
Biggest risk? Gosh. I don't know.
I'll assist here. I don't want to put words in your mouth, but I mean, buying into Ohio Valley Wrestling several years ago from this, I mean, I would say just not knowing you that well, that was probably something you had to really ponder, or maybe not. I don't think it would have been impulsive, but.
No, it was not impulsive. Yeah. It was not the plan. Mm-hmm. That was certainly not something that I had set out to do, but it did occur and it did happen, and it was, I think, kind of predestined or preordained, and so I don't really consider it a risk. I just consider it as another step in a particular direction that I'm supposed to go.
Sure. So Al, what do you consider to be your biggest mistake in your human journey? And that's a big word for some people. You can call it regret, disappointment. Be more than one, personal, professional.
Oh, I've got plenty of mistakes. Yeah. I have no regrets. Okay. I made certain choices, and that the only regret I have is that when I made those choices and those mistakes, other people suffered from me making those decisions. And that's where I learned the lesson that as a child, you break the rules, you make poor decisions, well, you're the only one that suffers the consequences. As an adult, those that you care about suffer those consequences with you. And that prevents me from necessarily making those same decisions. So,
right, well, you learn from your mistakes.
You learn from your mistakes,
cliche, yes. But yeah. What do you consider to be the best piece of advice ever given to you, Al? And again, it can be more than one, personal or professional.
Boy.
It can be in the ring or life in general in this case.
The lesson I learned in wrestling, which is, and I apply it every day in life, and that is to take feces and make shoe polish. No matter
I like
what,
that choice of wording.
Yeah, well, no matter what you're given, because you're always going to get, and you're going to be given a pile. Now you can sit there and commiserate and be sad and disappointed and victimized that you got a pile, or you can just take it, stir it up, make it into shoe polish. Your choice is yours.
If you think about that and just 30,000 feet up, that's what every entrepreneur does.
That's what everybody does. It's just some people choose to sit there and wallow in a pile, and others decide to just go ahead and see what they can. You know what, if we dry that out, we stack it up, we can burn that for fuel.
Right, exactly. And moving on to the next question.
Right.
So this goes back to what we alluded to a moment ago. When was the aha moment in your human journey or your career path? You mentioned when you were 14. Yeah. There's no familial history, just to bring that up again, in wrestling. It wasn't like your father was this preeminent wrestling persona or character. When was that aha moment? And it could be for wrestling or life in general. You can kind of interpret either way.
I don't think I've stopped having those moments, honestly. I wish I could give you for some people I think they can give you a definitive answer for some of these things, but I feel like I'm still constantly having those aha moments where another light goes on and I can put into a relation to the experiences I've had, why I've had them, how I could have had different ones or better ones or avoided certain ones if I'd have just been aware at that time. And so I'm very keen on observing. The more time and distance I have away from something, the more I can start to figure out and be honest with myself where I was responsible for that occurring, whether it be a success or a failure.
Well, you know, back to being 14, I mean, I'm not you, obviously, but just as a fellow human, that appears to me to be an aha moment. You kind of put your stake in the ground and said, this is what I'm going to do. And I would even argue today with a 14-year-old, you know, in 21st century America, if they said they wanted to do that, they'd probably get similar reaction.
And I think, you know,
being a professional wrestler, excuse me.
Yeah, and through my experience, I think I've learned too, and a lot of people, they think, you know, you're just, when you say this, it sounds like you're just doing a trope.
Right.
But I genuinely, when I tell people, you could do absolutely anything you want to do. You really can. Nothing's impossible. And they go, oh yeah, sure. But I mean, it's the truth. You can. You just have to make the decision. And then you always have to remain honest with yourself that you're willing to pay the price that it's going to take to achieve it. You know, and that's what it really comes down to. You know, I hear people all the time, every day, I'm sure you do too as well, that complain about, you know, I hate this job, blah, blah, blah. Well, you're not a tree. You're not planted. You can pick up and leave anytime you want.
Exactly.
And I can't do that. Why not? You can find another one just like it, and you could hate that job too. And then you can just go find another one there. Who cares? You know. But a lot of people, I think, and I know my own parents and a lot of my family members, you know, were caught up in, because I was told when I wanted to do something like this, which was not the traditional pursuit.
No, I don't mean that in any disrespect. I mean,
no,
it's just
not at all.
It's not.
I mean, it's not. I mean, you know, it's, you know, I was told, you know, you're not going to succeed, you're not going to this, you're not, you know, everything, and you need to have a regular job, that way you can be secure. But that security is a fallacy. And it more so even these days, because at any moment in time, they could downsize, they can, whatever the corporate terms are for, hey, you're fired, or we don't need you anymore.
We've automated. Yeah.
That can happen like that. So the belief that just because you have a typical vocation that allows you to go to the same building, perform the same tasks, you know, doesn't mean that you're any more secure than I am. You know, I know that it's not a matter of if at some point a particular aspect of what I'm doing is going to come to an end. It's going to change. It's a matter of when it's going to happen. And that's fine. And I'm willing to accept that and do what I need to do accordingly. You know, and I don't have an issue with that. But a lot of people do, because they have not lived the experience I've lived, where it's, you know, basically I know at some point, whatever I'm doing, it's going to change. It's going to become something different, either better or it's going to stop, and I'm going to then have to pick up and do something else.
Well, I think the most self-aware people, be it guests or just people I meet in life, have that kind of philosophy. You know, they know that there's chapters and the seasons change.
Yeah, that, I think, you know, back to your other question about an aha moment, and this sounds incredibly morbid in one sense.
No, go ahead.
It really does, because every time I say it, and people are like, just kind of look at me, boy, you're dark. When my father passed away, I realized one truth about life is that not just people, but everything, every situation dies. Everything is, and for me, everything is a story. Every person is a story. And every story has a beginning, a middle, and an end. Every relationship's a story. Every job is a story. Every experience is a story, you know? And I really believe at this point in my life, like, I have lots of, you know, what some people would consider negative experiences, but I don't consider them negative, because it gives me enough information now that I can tell stories, quite honestly, like, you'd be sitting there going,
no.
What?
That happened? No.
That really happened? I'd be like, yep, that did. Yeah.
More than once.
A couple times.
Yeah.
Yeah, and you know, and that means that for me, I've actually went out and lived a life and had all these experiences. Were they ones that I was looking forward to? Sometimes no. Yeah. Sometimes they worked out and they were like, hey, that's a good story. Yeah. And sometimes it's like, well, that's going to be a good story because no one's going to trump that later. Yeah. So.
You got a whole book, I think, full of those stories.
Yeah, true.
What is it like to be Al Snow? You know, when the lights are off, you're not in the ring. I always call it pillow talk with your wife or partner. You know, you're taking a shower, you're shaving. It's late at night. You know, you've had a long week or day. What's it like to be Al Snow?
Weird.
I've never heard anyone say that.
Weird. Yeah. I've always been, you know, and everyone these days wants to be different and unique, and that's maybe another aha moment. The realization we're not that much different from anybody else, you know. And the more that I've traveled the world, the more I realize people in other countries and other parts of the world, they are exactly like you and I. I've been in restaurants, I've been in bars, I've been in public areas, and I listen to conversations, and they have the same conversations there that they do here, of the same worries, the same concerns, the same anxieties, the same hopes, the same dreams, the same wants, the same needs. You have every single day. They do too. You know, and one of the truths of life is that people do not go to war. Governments go to war. You know, and we're not, all of us, or we all have our own challenges. We all have our own issues. And, you know, I've always been a little different, even when I was a kid. And, you know, and years later I realize it, and personality quirks and things, you know, and I just come to accept them, and just that's part of who I am.
Well, this is going to sound kind of gross, so I'll clean it up. But my father had a really eccentric view of life in general. He had a cane and a fedora. He was a real character. Yeah. Several people in the studio knew of him when he was around. And I said to him, you know, how am I going to get these big guests, you know, as the show? I could see it was getting momentum. It was growing in the early years, kind of like what you've done with Ohio Valley Wrestling. You know, it's starting to have its own life of its own. Yeah. He says, well, don't they go to the bathroom the same way you do? And I was like, what do you mean? He goes, just think about it. And then I did, and then I was like, he goes, they just happen to have a certain talent you don't have. And when I took that in, it was like, it was so liberating. It didn't hold me back from asking pretty much anyone, you know, within reason. That
listen, there ain't nobody bigger or better than anybody else.
Right, and that was a simpler way to put it.
For me, I have a job that people like to watch me do. You know, that's the only thing that separates me from an accountant, is that somebody's going to pay to watch me do my job. Nobody's going to pay to watch an accountant sit there and add figures.
Good point. No
you
offense to the
no offense to the accountants.
Right. Don't want to get a letter.
Yeah, don't want to or mess up my taxes.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
I'll get you.
Yeah, exactly.
No, but I mean, I that maybe that's another aha moment when I realized that too. That the one thing I learned when I became a professional wrestler, and I'm not saying this because I've been a professional wrestler, but the people that were in it, especially when I broke in, were some of the most eccentric and eclectic people that I'd ever met. And I knew that if they had not been doing what they were doing, they'd have probably been in jail. And not because they were bad people, but they were just that different from a regular society. But then getting to know them, they were probably some of the most highly intelligent and probably highly creative people that I really had a chance to meet. And they were so adept at being able to communicate, and they could walk into the office of the President of the United States. They would carry themselves if they were on the same level, and they would have a conversation that you would never know that was the first time they'd ever stepped in. They could literally walk out that door, there'd be a guy laying in the gutter, and they could sit down right beside him and do the exact same thing, where they're no better, they're no worse,
It's amazing.
And I find it fascinating when I meet people, because I meet, actors and models, and then they come around and they try to do and you're like, shut up.
What do you think it is? This is more of a 30,000-foot question. What is it about wrestling that's like in the DNA of us as a species, as humans? Because I'm now at a certain age of my life where I'm seeing it repeat. It's a whole new generation. My son and his buddies are getting into it, and I can see it beginning this next chapter of, I don't want to name names, but these big organizations that become hugely profitable and billions of dollars. There's something, and even with all the technology we've invented since the days when I was my son's age, it fascinates me that there's something organic in the DNA of us. You know, I've been to a couple of your events, and you can just, and there's people from all walks of life, socioeconomic, and we're all one. We're all enjoying the same thing. Yeah. And I just was curious if you had a take on what that is.
It really comes down to the fact of two things. One, I mean, it's the visceral, it's the attraction of competition, of, you know, watching two people or a team or a group of people competing against each other. Football, basketball, baseball, you know, as a species and as a society, we love to watch people, you know, watch competition, and we live vicariously through it. But the aspect of, for wrestling really is the art form of physical storytelling within the context of a competitive situation. And
I never thought of it that way, but it's exactly what it is.
it is, and that's why it draws, and always has drawn, such a huge audience for now well over a century. You know, the form of professional wrestling that you see right now, well, not to this degree, but really the basic concept started like in the early 1900s, like 1901, 1902, and then really took off with there was a group of promoters that were called the Gold Dust Trio. And the idea of selling the competition itself and manipulating the outcome to elicit an emotional response, that started back in the 20s. And then it has grown and developed. And what's funny, I've always found is, and it doesn't bother me, I don't really care, but two things. One, that there's still that wrestling's the redheaded stepchild of entertainment. It's kind of looked like, you like wrestling, you know, or the idea that if you do like it, like Bill Maher, I'd seen a clip where he made some remark about, you know, because he doesn't like Trump or whatever, and I could care less about politics.
Sure,
Jeez.
sure.
What a waste of time. But he, you know, the people that like, they like wrestling, like there's some kind of subculture of people you said yourself, there were people from all walks of life, all socioeconomic statuses, you know, and they all find it appealing. And it fascinates me that we still hold that kind of contempt for it as a society or in general, when, quite honestly, there's not been another form of live entertainment other than maybe music that has consistently drawn attendances like it does. Not once, not twice, multiple times throughout a year. Okay.
Regardless of what's going on in the
regardless
economy, the
of
world,
what else
wars,
is being
whatever, right?
what else is being offered as far as entertainment, and then as far as television, since the inception of television, it has been the one mainstay that has consistently drawn great ratings, not a season, an entire year, you know, and yet we have people that want to try to demean it or demean the fan base as if it's something less. And whenever anybody tries to do that, I mean, let's be honest, it's their way of trying to really elevate themselves and feel superior to something else and they're actually deep down threatened by the fact that this thing succeeds whether they want it to or not. So
it's the storytelling and the competition combined.
I think so, yeah.
Is it fair to say modern day gladiators, or is that too far?
To a degree, yeah. Okay. To a degree, you know, and that appeal has always been there, you know, even from ancient times, but more so because professional wrestling does one thing that everyone else, all other sports, because all of it, NFL, NBA, in fact, in the 70s, people don't realize the NFL went in court and said, we're not sports, we're sports entertainment. So the NFL started that. The reason WWE, Vince adopted that was so that the government could not come after him for monopoly on wrestling because it's sports entertainment, which now it competes with other forms of sports entertainment. It's very intelligent, yes. So, but by calling it wrestling, well, there's no other wrestling company can compete with WWE, but sports entertainment, that's UFC, that's NFL, that's NBA, that's NHL, that's, you know what I mean? That's PGA. And the one thing people don't realize is that once you monetize any event, any competitive event, you monetize it, you license it, you merchandise it, and you get television rights, it's not a competition or a sport anymore. It's now a business.
Yeah. It's totally true. That's exactly what it is.
Which is exactly what wrestling is.
Yeah.
It's a business. And our business is the art of selling you who the performer is and selling you why they're doing what they're doing.
I mean, because if two men or women, you know, there's women wrestlers, we'll talk about that, you know, came out and they just did their thing, but there was no story, there was no character, it wouldn't have the same, you'd just be like,
but
what just happened?
But that's the same with the NFL. That's the same with the NFL or the NHL.
The logos, the team names, the mascots.
Well, it's relatability.
Okay.
The reason that in the United States, baseball stadiums are as huge as they are and they draw the audiences is because every person has at one time or another picked up a baseball bat, hit a ball. So you relate physically to what's happening. Basketball, you've done it in your driveway. Football, you've done it at a family reunion or you've done it
front
on,
yard
you know
with
what I
your
mean?
dad or whoever.
That's right.
Yep.
Professional wrestling, when's the last time you literally got thrown into some ropes and then got somebody drop kick you in the face, you know?
Or have my pelvis realigned.
Right, or
no,
realign your pelvis.
Right,
yeah.
Exactly. So Al, what do you think people get wrong about you? In other words, do you ever feel misunderstood? I call it the human condition. Sure. You know, we all do. I've had some interesting emails over the years, and like, wow, I've never even met this person. They know all about me.
Yeah.
You know, so I'm curious.
Lots of people get lots of things wrong with me, and that's fine. It doesn't bother me. It's not their responsibility, you know, to interpret, you know, again, back to the aha question, because I'm having aha moments all the time
well,
when I
that's
go,
good.
you know,
we're doing our job.
Moment.
This is great. Good.
One of the things I've really gotten to understand, and this happened when I was in WWF for the first time, I realized there is one person on this planet I can control. That's me. I cannot control anyone else. And it helped me so much to understand that, even with my own children, because I realized as a parent, because you know, I've actually got 6 kids, 2 from a previous marriage, they're stepdaughters, and then I have my son and daughter, and I have 2 stepsons now from my marriage with Jessica. So why I have that many children, I have no idea. At some point, I guess I'm going to organize and we're going to go take over a small town in Iowa or something. But I got 7 grandchildren. Gee, they just keep breeding like rabbits.
That's another show. You have a reality show right here,
the
Wrestler's Bunch or whatever.
Good Lord. It's like, guys, stop. Have you figured out what causes this? But I realized as a parent, like when my children were young, like your kids, you get to make all the decisions. And the reason you do is because for every decision that's made, no matter what it is, no matter what you think, no matter what you want to tell yourself, there is a price to be paid. Whether it's emotion, time, money, something, it's going to cost you. Every decision you make is going to cost you. When they're young, they can't afford the price. So and as they get older, they get to make more decisions because they get to bear more of the consequence. When my children became adults, or at least chronologically, they certainly don't always act like it.
Well, their names remain anonymous. Protect the innocent.
I'll put them out there. When they became adults, I realized I no longer bear any cost on any decision they make. And I can't control them anymore. So I can only offer them advice. And I say this to them all the time, which is one of the greatest quotes ever. I'm going to give you advice. If you're smart enough, I probably don't need to tell you. If you're dumb enough, you're probably not going to listen. You make the choice.
Well, my late father, I got to mention, he used to go crazy, and he'd go, if you just listen to me,
right,
I could save you a quarter century. And then my mother would be like, but he has to learn it himself.
That's right.
So there was a time I was thinking about this before my dad taught me the thing about the bathroom. We're all the same, different talents.
Yeah.
And it totally liberated me. There was I won't mention the name, there's a guest I was a little intimidated by, so I had beer in my cup just so I could ease my
Oh, really?
my pain. And then it was one of the best ones we ever did. But anyway, it just reminded me how Exactly.
Yeah.
So Al, this is one of my favorite parts of the interview. I call it the dessert phase, if you will. And this is where we're going to kind of go through your life.
Okay.
You've had an interesting life. I probably could have pulled twice, 3, 4 times as many pictures as I did, but this will give you a flavor.
You Google my name and a lot of things come up.
Yeah. So this is looks like a still photo, maybe.
It is. It's a promo photo from WWE. Gotcha. It was during the time where I think that was around when I was doing Tough Enough, the television series. I think it might have been around season 3, I think.
Now this is not you, because someone might think that's you up there, but I think you're face down on the
face
mat
down,
here.
probably down.
Were
on
these
that.
2 guys tag teaming you? Is what it looks like.
Yeah, they were probably stomping the crap out of me. So
That's where you got your pelvis realigned.
yeah, might have.
So this is.
Yeah.
So I want you to tell as briefly as you can, because we've got a lot of ground to cover with the pictures and the rest of the MoxieTalk.
About head.
Yeah. How was this your idea? Was this
Yeah.
a promoter's idea? Can you briefly describe it? And as you're talking about it, I'll kind of just
Sure,
flip through because a lot of these are just.
When I had originally had signed a contract with WWF in 1995, and I spent 2 years there, and yeah, a little crazy. I was getting frustrated because I wasn't making any headway, and it was a lot of them were my own mistakes. And I now, with reflection, you realize that. And that was where I had that aha moment that I was going to have to get to a place where I had to leave WWF and go someplace else to reinvent myself, or else I'd always be staying there. So I tried to quit, but they had an option on my contract, and they rolled it over. And I was like, that didn't help my attitude at all. But then they put me on loan to a smaller regional company that they were working in concert with by the name of ECW.
Okay.
I knew I had to reinvent myself, and I had to do something different. So I was trying to do something that where if you were a fan and you only watched me in WWF, you could still kind of connect. And if you were one of these fans with ECW, they were a little more hardcore type, that they followed wrestling really devoutly, that they would know, and I came up with the idea that, at that time, I think I'd been wrestling for about 14 or 15 years, maybe 13, I don't know. And I figured if anybody had been doing what I've been doing for as long as I've been doing it and was still frustrated, you'd have a nervous breakdown, or you'd have a mental break. And so I started trying to show those things when I was in the ring. And I was reading a book on abnormal psychology and going through different things and exhibiting traits of, illnesses and things. And then I read a case study about a woman who had schizophrenia. And she had what they called transference disorder, which meant she would hear voices from objects or things, or it was from objects, and she thought the objects were crazy, not her. Oh, wow. So I found that fascinating.
That's the excuse I would use.
Yes. Right. And so I was in at the they called it the ECW Arena, but it's the Alhambra Arena in Philadelphia. And at that time, it was terrible. The building was just dilapidated. Now it's beautiful, and I'm like, of course it looks great now.
Because I'm not here.
I'm not here. But back then it was bad. On one side they would store all the supplies, because in Philadelphia they have a Mummers Day parade. Okay. So we were over there and we were taking photographs for a Japanese wrestling magazine, and I found a styrofoam head, and I thought, I know what I'm going to do. I'm going to carry this with me everywhere I go, and I'm going to treat it as if, I hear voices from it, and it's crazy. I'm not. They are crazy. And it was always a they or a them, because there's multiple personalities. So if you name one, you got to name them all. So that's a hassle. You know what I mean?
Right.
So you just they, them,
right,
and interact with it, and really what it became was an outlet for my frustration.
Sure. And
that was where I learned a very important and valuable lesson, that in not just in wrestling but in life, and that is that you're never ever selling what you do. You're always selling who you are. And if I can make you believe in who I am, you'll believe in anything I do or anything I say.
You said you didn't like politics. Sorry,
Oh,
man.
I'd be great. I would. I'd be terrible.
That's another episode.
That's the truth.
Yeah.
I would. This is legitimately for WWE when we were. They were doing the something campaign for voting.
Okay.
Getting young people to vote, and we went up and I spoke at the Washington Press Club, and like a bunch of people came up and were like, "Do you ever think about running in politics?" And I'm like, and one time in my hometown in Lima, I accidentally ran for mayor.
Accidentally.
And almost won.
Oh.
And I was like, what is going on?
That's what I think happens to some politicians. They end up winning, and they're like,
oh, what do I do? Because all I did was I got angry about the fact that the incumbent was running unopposed.
Oh,
and like
just,
nobody was bothering to run
want him to
against
have at least
and
something.
I was like, and my platform was I just have more personality than him.
Right.
He had, like, at one point he saw me in the mall and he was like, "You said I have a personality of a dinette set." I go, "Well, you're lucky if you have that." So, and so whenever I would do a public appearance, like I'd on radio or TV locally, I'd just, "Hey, I'm a write-in candidate," and I started getting so many write-in votes.
Oh, no.
I'm watching the local news and they're like saying my name, and then years later I find out from one of the people that were part of the Republican Party or whatever, that when I announced my candidacy, the mayor and all of the Republican Party like panicked and were like, "What are we going to do?" and had a big strategy meeting. I went, "That's awesome." I was just doing it as a joke.
right.
And they took it seriously.
Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh.
If I'd have only known.
Yeah.
So I could have had so much fun.
I want to show that you also have ladies, women wrestling,
yeah.
which I think is great.
Yeah.
And they go at it. They don't hold back. Let me tell you.
I'm very proud of in OVW because I've not just this time. I was there with WWE in the developmental era, and then I was there again with Impact Wrestling in the developmental period. One of the things I'm really proud of in OVW is that everyone, and I do mean everyone, has been given opportunities to excel. And it has not mattered, like we have had quite honestly, every race, every creed, every nationality that have been heavyweight champions. We, had an openly gay champion. None of that means anything. Doesn't matter. We were the first years ago. Long before it became a popular thing, I had women main eventing our television program, and was not unusual to see. And quite honestly, they were some of the people that I could go to and know that I could send an audience home happy and excited to come back the next time.
Well, because of your Netflix show, which we're going to talk about.
Oh, yeah.
My son and his buddies went out and they're having a grand time.
Yeah.
Several of the pictures I just showed were from that evening.
Yeah, that's the greatest compliment I can get, really.
I think it's to get kids' attention in this day and age is something else, let me tell you. Hang on a second, guys. Did I not bring them in here? Oh, here they are. I love it. We can put a man on the moon. Well, last night we tried to do that, and they never did show a picture. I was like, that's another story. Did you hear about that? They tried to land that thing on the moon, and there's no video or photo of it. I don't know.
Oh, really?
I've been dead to the world with this today, so I don't know. But I was like, wow, that's hope to find the American flag. So I love this. I realized in my research of you, you're an author. You basically put all your stories into a book, and you said you had some interesting things.
I did, and I was very honest about everything and owned a lot of the mistakes that I've made, or experiences, I should say.
There's a part here. I usually don't do this, but I thought this was kind of insightful. It says, in the press release for the book, Snow said, "We want the book to cover more than what I did in front of the cameras. There are so many stories from the road, things that only seem to happen to me that have made me who I am today. I've always considered every new situation as a potential learning experience, and this book will give me the opportunity to share that for better or for worse." I thought that was great. That's why I wanted to share that. And so before I get to this next thing, this is where you're obviously in video games. That's got to, is that well, I mean, you have the action figure we talked about earlier. But I mean, is that a strange feeling, or is that just kind of a byproduct of all of it?
It's awesome. I mean, every time an opportunity like that presents itself, action figures, video games, whatever, it's a little piece for me of immortality. I mean, it honestly, like now that I have grandkids, having those things and then them getting to see it. means so much more. It meant a lot at the time when I was getting it, because for me personally it meant a lot. But now it means even more that now my grandkids can see it and be like, whoa, he actually must have been kind of cool.
Well, yeah. Well,
At some point, he must have had things going on.
Well, having my own offspring now and losing parents and being the middle generation of the two, there is an appreciation of that. And, I tell my son, well, if I'm not around, just turn it on because it's somewhere.
Yeah.
There's all these videos floating around out there. And I tell guests, a quick aside, sometimes they're like, well, why should I go do this? I'm like, because there's generations that are going to come after you that cared a lot, and you're always alive.
Yeah.
And once they turn you on, you're there.
Yeah.
So that's a great segue into this. And this, as I think with a lot of people, was a docu-series on Netflix that brought tremendous, I would say, worldwide attention to little old Louisville, Kentucky, if you will. We're not so little anymore between Bourbon and the Derby. But can you share with the audience kind of the backstory of what you're allowed to tell, so to speak, how that idea came up? Was it your idea and then you got the right people? Or did somebody just walk in one day and say, hey, I want to do this? And you're like, okay. I don't want to oversimplify it, but I'm just curious.
Situations like that really kind of are pretty simple. I've been very, again, blessed because like I had the opportunity with WWE. I was a part of Tough Enough, which was a reality series. And at the time that reality TV was done, there was really only Survivor, and then there was, Real World.
Yeah,
that was it. Then, Tough Enough was a combination of the two that was done for the very first time. And to get to be a part of that was an exceptional, once in a lifetime opportunity. And then I get to be a part of the UK and Britain. I got to be a part of a similar kind of but shorter, condensed version called British Boot Camp. And then now, out of nowhere, our mayor Craig Greenberg and radio personality Matt Jones had bought into, after COVID, we were in a situation with the company, and they came in and bought into the company as partners. And then this is how crazy it works. Craig and his wife, or should I say Mayor Greenberg, I guess. I don't know.
It works, either one.
They were attending a party, or a wedding. I think it was a wedding. And there was a school classmate they both went to school with that was an executive producer for BBC America. And the conversation starts, and it's revealed that Craig has bought into this wrestling company. And Matt Jones, who's a big sports guy, had the idea and pitched to the executive of the idea of doing a documentary similar to Last Chance U. Never in a million years expecting that you'd get the same guy who produced Last Chance U. But it just so happened that one of the other executive producers in the BBC America knew Greg Whiteley, who had produced Last Chance U and Cheer, who had done just amazing work with those topics, and the BBC producer, the second one, came here to Louisville, did what they call a sizzle reel. It's where it's a short, condensed little thing.
I've done them, but I know what you're. But the average person might. You put all your good stuff in about a minute or two.
Yep.
It's like
and
the trailer.
So shows it to Greg. Greg is fascinated, and he goes to Netflix, convinces the executives to allow him to come here and film a reel to present to the executives. He comes here, falls in love with the place, gives the executives the reel. They greenlight it, and then May of that year, the crew showed up at the last week of May and literally filmed 12 to 16 hours a day, 7 days a week until the end of August.
I knew it had to be a lot. For those that haven't seen it, and I'll be frank, it's one of those kind of things that it could have really been bad.
Oh, it could have went off the rails.
Yeah, and it was so well done, edited, the sound.
And that's all a testament to the talent and the passion of Greg Whiteley and his crew. They are
so
all,
wherever you are.
Yeah,
Greg.
thank you, Greg.
Yeah, because that changed. I mean, phenomenal. I mean, it's tectonic, I would argue.
Yeah, it's been really. Now for us, the pressure is in trying to capitalize on it and then build off of it and not let it just fade away. So we're doing our very best to do that.
Well, I just like we'll get back to the matter at hand, if you will. That they talked about the lives outside the ring.
Yeah.
Of the performers, the wrestlers, and I think that's huge for anyone.
That was a very important aspect for Greg. He wanted to, when we all, as the, basically the subject matter, we all had to come together and we all had to agree that we were all going to be 100% open. If we were going to do this, you couldn't be half pregnant. You're either all in or you're all out. There were some people that they didn't want to do it. They just, which was fine. It was like, I respect that, and when, Greg arrived, I said, I want you to understand that because of the responsibilities I have to the people that are here and to, there are rules, crazy as this may sound, but in the wrestling business, the old days, it was kind of like the mob. And there were certain rules of conduct and etiquette and you're held accountable. And I said, when you go away, I'm going to be the one left holding the bag. I said, so I'm not going to do anything different. I'm not going to say anything different. I'm not going to be any different. I'm going to be what I will be when you're here and when you're not. And if you don't want it or you don't like it, don't use it. I said, but I'm not changing because I have responsibilities to the company. I have responsibilities to every one of these talent, and I have responsibilities to the wrestling business. So that when I leave here and I go to conventions or whatever, and I see these guys and they've watched this, the last thing I need is for them to now call me on the carpet and be upset or whatever about something. And thank God they have all unanimously loved it. I mean, there's I don't want to give it away mainly because I want people to watch it, but there's a moment where there's a mother-daughter dynamic, and they're wrestlers, and they get in the ring, and they do more than just wrestle. There's blood. I won't give any more than that. And then there's a medical event with one of the folks that's highly featured in the program, and I was like, wow, this is no holds barred. There was even more.
Right, but that was just two to give people a flavor of what I recall.
There was a lot of stuff that didn't make it.
Yeah.
That we had,
Wait a minute, wrestlers too?
We're hoping still, yes. We got our
I'm just going to hold this up. This is the local weekly business publication, Business First, and you made the front page. You got a big centerfold in there of you guys, so I just wanted to share that. It's been on our table during the Moxie Talk, but we'll move along now. I appreciate you sharing that. Can you define leadership or wrestling in one word, if you had to, in the great English lexicon, as I call it?
Never ask anyone to do something you wouldn't do yourself. That's it.
I got it.
You're in authority is directly in relationship to your responsibility. If you have no responsibility, guess what you have? Zero authority. If you have all of the responsibility in a particular area or company or whatever, guess what? You have all the authority. If you're the one who at the end of the day is going to be the one that pays the bill, you have all the say. If other people can pay parts of the bill, they get part of the say. If I walk into my kid's house tomorrow and I start paying their mortgage and their electric bill and buy their groceries, I get to tell them how to live their lives. You know why? Because I'm taking all the responsibility. So therefore, I get all the authority. If they want that responsibility back, they can have it at any time, and they can then therefore have the authority to make those decisions.
That's a pretty simplistic way to live. It's not as easy as you just said it, though.
It is.
Well, it is, but we're human.
You hold yourself to that standard. That applies to every aspect in life. Realize, that applies to politics, that applies to religion, that applies to everything, because every choice, every decision has a cost, and that means it has a responsibility, which means you have a certain amount of authority over it. You're free to do whatever you want. You just realize you're going to pay a price. At some point, it's going to come back. Now, you can't sit there and go, oh, poor me.
Right. What do you...
I've tried. It doesn't work.
Yeah. Al, what do you consider to be your why? We kind of touched upon it earlier. What makes you do all this? What's your why? In other words, what motivates you?
I just love to live. I love to go do. I love to go experience. I love to just go. I've always been that way. I've always just, I'll sit at home, I'll do nothing. I love that. But I mean, I love to go out and do something, create something, make something, leave something behind. Whether it's good or bad, at least, I'm going to leave some kind of mark. So might be a skid mark, but I'm going to leave a mark. That's for sure.
Man, you're killing me, man. Do you like to be alone, or do you have a problem being alone?
No, I've spent probably a large majority of my adult life alone by being on the road. A large part of my life, you're with people. Yeah, there is a camaraderie with those people, but they're also competing with you. And what a lot of people don't understand, and I'm sure it applies, to lots of other walks of life, but and I try to teach this to the young people in OVW, because they all right now have a destination.
Sure.
They're
on the way.
Yeah, I mean, when I started doing it, it was to do it because I want the 3 goals I had, quite honestly, literally when I was 18 years old, I was like, I want to be able to do this for a living and make a decent, be able to take care of my family and myself. I didn't really think of a family at 18 but
no, right.
But that was the essence of it, and I wanted to create moments or matches that people would remember. And I feel like I've done that because I've, over the years, have lots of different people, even before ever going into WWE, that have come up and, I remember this time and you did this, or you said this, or you acted this way, or that happened, and and then I wanted to be able to create a name that when I left, when I was no longer in the business, people would still acknowledge and would recognize. And I think I've done that, but nowadays, every young person gets in with a singular thing in mind, and that's a destination. And I always try to advise them, if I were you, I wouldn't be so focused on the destination. I'd be focused on just enjoying the journey, because I can tell you, when they get to the destination, they're not going to be happy. And part of the reason that they're not going to be happy and they're not going to be satisfied is because that's all they were concerned with, was getting to that destination. But the other part of it is, especially in this business, it's so ultra competitive that if you're in that locker room in WWE, the stakes are so high that one of your contemporaries, one of your other performers, one of your friends gets 30 seconds of television time, you're immediately thinking, I should have had that, and I'm going to do everything I can to get it. And you should. That's what drives it. But you have to learn to stay 2 steps ahead. So the only thing I can liken it to is mentally playing poker and chess 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. You get no days off because you're only as good as the last time you performed. And if you kind of slip, you kind of don't deliver, and it gets worse as you go up, and the stakes get higher, the rewards get greater.
More people showing up to watch you wrestle. Yeah.
Exactly. Well, then the stress and the pressure and the necessity that you have to perform. And if you don't, now one of your contemporaries, your peers, can use that and start creating a perception that maybe you don't have it anymore, or you're not the right person to go with for the company, and you start to slip. And then what you've worked so desperately hard to
physically and mentally
can be taken away. So that's why most people, once they get to that destination, are not happy, But I think even in life in general, if people were I read a quote where someone said something about the man that enjoys walking is always happier than the man that enjoys arriving at the destination.
That's a great point. So, it took me a long time to learn all that, by the way, as a fellow human.
Yeah, listen, I'm 60 now, so I'm starting to, I've still got a long ways to go.
Sure,
I've got 33 years left of me, and that's it. At 93,
you just calculate.
I literally, I sat down, because, you start getting older, you start going,
things don't feel the same when you get up the next morning.
I live in pain every day. Yeah. But 40 was no big deal. 50 was, and then 55, I started getting a little weird, because I was like, 5 more years, I'm going to be 60. Ooh. And the 60 was scary, because now I'm like, well, the clock's ticking now. You know what I mean? Yeah. And but then I was like, you know what? No, it's 33, and then I'm done.
Yeah.
Because that way, as you get older, you start to look more like a goblin or a troll or something. And
but inside, you're the same person.
You're the same person.
You look in the mirror,
and then you look, you walk
oh.
past the mirror, and you go, Jesus, what is that?
Troll.
Your grandkids come walking around the corner. Grandpa, you scared me. So, 33. I'm done.
Right. What do you consider to be your biggest, most positive contribution to humanity, or has it even happened yet?
I doubt that it's even happened yet. I don't think I've really changed anybody's life by putting on some tights.
I don't know. You've changed.
Smacking somebody with a plastic head.
I think you're too self-deprecating. I'll just say this as a fellow human in the short time I've known you and OVW. I mean, watching all those people in the docuseries, watching them, the 2 nights I've been there, both the people I've come with and watching the performers, you're changing lives. You're not doing it by yourself.
Yeah, I'm flattered.
I mean, it takes a village. That's that old phrase. But I mean, there's something there.
But it doesn't take a village.
Okay.
It takes one person to be willing to accept the responsibility that they want to be different and do something different, and then they can change the world. That takes a village thing. I used to get in trouble a lot because we do the WWE would always trot me out when we were having the wrestling, and of course the media would show up and they'd, what do you consider yourself a role model for children? I go, yeah, mine. I consider myself a role model for mine. I don't consider myself a role model for yours. Your children can look at me and can idolize me. We all do that as adults. Yeah. We idolize celebrities, but they ain't a role model. You know who's a role model for me? My parents. Nobody else. Do you know why? Because it takes a parent to raise a child. It doesn't take a village to raise a child. And if your child is looking outside of his or her door for a role model, you parents aren't doing your job.
Failed.
You instill in your children whatever it is as far as thoughts, ideas, and morals that are in line with you. And they get out in the real world and they see me doing something that ain't in line, well, they're not going to do it. Simple as that. They're not going to fall under that influence. So, but this cop-out of it takes a village, no, don't. I've never asked my postman to raise my kids. Never asked their teachers to raise them. And this crazy thing of the TV, you know what I do, and I used to do? If they were, I've made money, so I was able to afford TV sets, and apparently my wife at the time loved them too and bought them all over the house. But each one of those TV sets came with something. It was called a remote.
Yeah.
You know what? If I walked in and I saw they were watching something I didn't want them to watch, I went, click, no, you're not watching that. Crazy, but it entailed that I had to get up and go find them, and then, or when they were watching it with me, and I go, oh, that's getting a little
I've had
sketchy.
to do that, yeah.
And I'll turn it, and then when I, oh, that's probably past now, I'll turn it, or you put the hands over the,
Exactly.
What are you doing?
What keeps you motivated when things get tough, when you're running on empty? You've talked about moments where you've had lows in your career. You went and did the head thing, and so what keeps you motivated? And now you're in this, like you said before, things change and the experience is in, and you're in this whole different phase and chapter of, you're more the producer or promoter, I would say, than the actual performer.
Yeah.
What keeps you motivated?
I think people think I'm kidding and they think I'm being self-deprecating, but really, I have only one singular talent. That's it. And that is, I just don't quit. And I don't know why. I don't, and I don't know where it came from. I don't know if anybody instilled it in me, but I've always been that way.
Did your parents have a lot of energy?
Oh, yeah. I mean, my father was a very charming, very, outgoing, down-to-earth person, and my mother was very active and as well. I, as a kid, was a little more introverted, and was, and I loved to read. Like I still, I've read because of traveling so much, I've read every classic piece of literature you're supposed to read. I've read all kinds of mythology. I read the Bible. I read the Quran. I haven't read the Torah. I read the Book of Mormon. I've read all the time. I still read comic books every week because I love and the writing. I had stopped for a while, and then I met a friend who is a comic book artist, and he kind of got me hooked back in. And because of the level of sophistication and character development it just took me right back into it again. So, you know, it wasn't like the simplistic ones that I would read when I was a kid. So, you know, so it's just a form of storytelling, graphic storytelling. That's just all it is. So, but I still love to read, and then, you know, and I love nothing more than to, you know, go and sit somewhere and.
Well, you have a high energy level. That's why I was, you know, like I said, if I didn't know you and all the surgeries and injuries you had and your background, I mean, I would never in a million years think that was your background. So
well, I just in public I turn that on,
right.
And then when I go home, I turn it right
the
off.
Troll
and
comes
out.
Yeah. So how could you describe in particular detail a scenario where you utilize your own philosophy on leadership? You had mentioned earlier in the leadership one-word description question, I think it was modeling. So maybe you could.
I do every day. You know, I acknowledge my responsibility in regards to OVW as a company. I acknowledge my responsibilities in regards to all of the production staff, any of the employees, and all of the talent. And I try to whatever degree I can, because a lot of times I just can't do everything. You know, I try to lead by example, and I do live by the rule that I'm never going to ask someone to do something that I wouldn't do myself. It's not beneath me to, you know, at the end of the night be cleaning up the arena like everybody else. It's not beneath me to, you know, carry boards and steel frame and putting up the ring, or it's not beneath me to, you know, sit there with the television editor into the late hours of the night as we're constructing the television show. You know, they've several times, you know, with the other partners, they try to give me a title. I don't need a title, but apparently, you know, everybody, you know,
right.
I had to fill out a contract just yesterday for a live event that we're going to have at the Marathon Music Hall in Nashville, Tennessee. Mm-hmm. And of course, it, you know, where your signature is a title. And I'm like, co-owner, I guess. I don't know. I just make one up. So, you know, but people like to, I guess, put themselves over and say, I'm the president. I'm a this. I'm a that.
So you started the training academy with Ohio Valley Wrestling.
Yeah.
Is that still ongoing? And
it is.
And there's not very many of those, correct?
Well, no, there actually is a proliferation.
Oh, I'm sorry.
It's unfortunate because really how all of this came to be, the owning of Ohio Valley was, I was at the time, because I'd bought the company from Danny Davis, the founder, in 2018, and that was with my partner Chad Miller and Joe Reeves. And I had met Chad Miller. He was the executive director of the Kentucky Boxing Wrestling Commission. And I was getting very frustrated. I kind of go through that every once in a while, apparently in periods of my life. I was getting very frustrated that there was no standards as far as professional wrestling were concerned. And my wife is a licensed therapeutic masseuse, mm-hmm. and she's licensed.
Right.
So she had to go to a state accredited school. She had to be taught by a state accredited teacher, complete a certain number of state required hours of education, and then had to have a certain number of residency hours, hands-on supervised experience, before she could even take a test to have a license. And that applies to whether you're a barber, you're a beautician, you're a mortician, and let's face it, what could go wrong there?
Wow.
Your topic's already assumed room temperature. So,
yes.
But as a licensed professional wrestler in any state that has a commission, you just take a physical and you pay your money. And ta-da.
So a heartbeat, basically.
Exactly. You have a pulse, you can fog a mirror. Well, mm-hmm. Congratulations, you're now a professional wrestler.
Wow.
And that irritated me, and I found it insulting.
That's fascinating, because I would have never thought that.
Yeah, I know.
I mean, I would have thought there was 4 or 5 core ones around the country, and they all kind of had their own little flavor.
There's good ones. I mean, like Booker T was a former WWE superstar, has one in Houston. You have NXT, which is the developmental for WWE, which is obviously... but one thing that we have that none of them have is that we're actually accredited by the State Office of Proprietary Education that they oversee all secondary education, all universities, all trade schools, all of that. And we're actually certified as a trade school for professional wrestling, sports entertainment.
So you can get a certificate or a degree.
Well, you get a certificate, but the thing that we do that no one else does is we don't just. I've never looked at, like a lot of people do, like professional wrestling schools or training centers or whatever. They look at it like it's like learning martial arts or boxing, and it's not. You're literally teaching young men and women skills to pursue a vocation, a career, that they can go out and have opportunities to really make a living at. So that being the case, we don't just teach the in-ring part of things, the physical aspect, the psychology of storytelling, all of those things. We also teach them how to operate a camera, how to do lighting, how to do sound, how to do editing. Wonderful friend of mine who's a former wrestler, his name's Mike Bucci, is the vice president of Fifth Third Bank. He comes in, teaches a personal finance class.
That's brilliant. That's great.
You know, we teach social media management. We teach live event management. We so that, because it's not a matter of when, or I mean if, it's a matter of when their in-ring careers are going to come to an end, and if they have some of these kind of skills, they could potentially parlay them into still having a career.
Which helps the whole industry.
Correct. And two good examples of that really inspired me to do it was when we did Tough Enough 2, there was a young girl, her name was Jessie, and she got eliminated from the competition. She voluntarily came back to be an intern for Tough Enough 3 with MTV. That led to her being a backstage segment producer for WWE. She then learned skills and took those out and became a television producer for major television projects around the world. And still has a huge successful career, all because she learned other skills. We had a young man by the name of James Long who came in from Virginia initially years ago, started wrestling with OVW. He taught himself how to edit, how to operate cameras, lighting, sound, all of that. Was so immensely talented at it that as a wrestler, he only reached a certain level. But he had a feel, and because of that he had done it, he had experienced what was going on in the ring, he was able to communicate that through his projects. I got him hired with Impact Wrestling, and then from there he got hired with WWE and is a top executive producer for WWE and has been there for the last several years. So, and has a completely different career than what he had initially thought he would have when he first broke into wrestling. So,
how many people have gone through real quickly, roughly?
OVW as a whole, I'd say...
The training, I mean.
Oh, the training in that? Since we've become a certified trade school, I'd say probably 20 or 30. Yeah. It's always fascinating to watch. And at first it really kind of frustrated me and disappointed me. Sure. But then I got to learn to just accept it. And it was part of what fascinated me with my involvement in Tough Enough was everyone has a fantasy of what it is they want to do. And then when they meet the reality of what it really takes to do it, how quickly some people, and I always tell them, you should be very proud of yourself. You should not be disappointed because you did the one thing that probably 98% of the population wouldn't do. Yeah. You just came in here and tried. Yeah. How many people will say, "Oh, I'd love to do that." Well, go do it. Right. And they just won't.
Exactly.
Because they're, for whatever reason.
Exactly.
So, I try to make it a positive, but I do understand that there is an immense difference between what you thought it was going to be like and what it really turns out to be.
I got you. What does Al Snow consider to be his biggest pet peeve? It can be more than one. Is there one that just like, regardless of where you are in the world, literally, figuratively, I guess, professionally wrestling or out of the ring?
My biggest pet peeve, quite honestly, might sound crazy to say, but it is the people feeling like they could treat other people differently than what they would want to be treated themselves. That just annoys me. How hard is it? And I get it, not everybody's perfect, and we can't control everybody, but would you, if you're saying something to somebody or behaving in a certain way, would you want that done to you? Well, no. Would you want it done to your kids? No. Well, then why are you doing it to them? Stop.
No one's asking, but mine is when you get ghosted. That's the term.
Oh, ghosted?
And it's like, and it's always, as you move through life, it's always a certain few individuals.
Yeah.
And then you realize you have to write them out of your life because it's like they don't
But the story came to
You
an
know,
end. You know what I mean?
you can't respond to my email or text in 3 days or whatever, you know, and you've done it 8 times, you know, I
Right,
think we're
yeah.
done. But anyway.
Yeah. Well, those are stories.
Yeah.
And every story has a beginning, a middle, and an end. And you can't start another story
Right.
until one story comes to a finish.
Exactly.
You know?
Exactly. If someone were to ask you, what does Al Snow stand for, what would you tell them? Not how they may perceive you, again, before like being misunderstood, but what do you stand for?
What do I stand for? I don't know. I never really thought about it. I guess just living life to the fullest. Yeah, just, you know, I want to skid into the dirt and this just worn out.
Yeah.
Like all the springs.
Well, you're on your way.
All the hoses. Yeah, I want it all just ready to go.
Yeah.
And then just drop in.
Just drop in?
Yeah.
Yeah, I like that.
And I honestly, I've joked about this, but I don't want anybody at my funeral or whatever we do, whatever ceremony they do. I don't want anybody crying. I want everybody laughing and
same.
remembering, you know, all the awesome stuff. Hey, stuff me and stand me in the corner. That'd be awesome. Or put me in the casket, we'll have a viewing, and then I'll like cut me in half and put like a gate hinge on, and then there's a little button with a pneumatic thing, and I sit up, you know.
God.
I've actually thought about paying somebody like $50 and just stand there in a like Grim Reaper outfit and just point at other people like you're next.
Well, I might top you here. I want to be taxidermed and be one of those Walmart.
Oh,
where you
yeah.
just- They put the quarter in, you know.
Yeah,
and
that'd be great.
it's not legal, by the way, but anyway.
Yeah, that's disappointing. It should be.
It is.
I don't know why they won't let us just have that wish. You know?
I don't know. You can taxiderm what, hunting things?
Yeah,
you know, so
yeah. I mean, I got to stick Grandma in the chair, and she'd always be there.
she's always with us.
I did do that one time. We were Mike Bucci
Okay.
and his brother back and forth. Like, you know, this was prior to the internet and all this stuff. We would practical joke each other. So like one day they called the Humane Society and claimed that I had a snake got loose in my basement. So when I pull up at my house, my wife and my kids are out in a panic on the porch because there's a guy there wanting to capture a giant snake in the basement. And I'm like, let me explain. So these two guys, they would order mattresses and have them delivered to your house. Remember when it was 1-800 mattress? They'd call.
My God.
Yeah, or they would call and they would order a demonstration for one of the scooters, and the person would show up at your house. And I'm like, they lived in Toms River, New Jersey, so I went to the library. The library back then had phone books, and I found they had a phone book for Toms River, New Jersey. Took that with me and called a taxidermist, and basically as serious as I could, and told him that Grandma had died and she's still in the house, and could you come over and we'd like to stuff her and mount her in the chair because when I have her, and they showed up, and at the time these guys were young enough, they still lived at home with their parents, and their parents were freaking out.
Imagine.
Yeah. I would drive by on the highway and there'd be a billboard to donate your car to the Kidney Foundation. I'd call up and I'd give it their address and their phone number, and they'd.
That's just one of 1,000 of your stories.
I
love that.
Gave them a subscription to NAMBLA, which is the National American Men Boys Love Association magazine. So,
Do you think there's a difference today in your respective, in this case, wrestling journey than when you first got started? I mean, we're talking almost half a century roughly.
immensely.
Better, worse, or different?
I think in a lot of ways better for the performers. When I first got into the wrestling business, it was a very closed, very secular business, and was really, quite honestly, was operated a lot like you would think the rules of a mob or mafia. You know, you were held accountable for different things, and a large part of that was because the vast majority of the people that were in it they utilized it as a form of making a living. And they never ever wanted to put that at risk. And if you were a person who put that at risk, then you were blackballed. You were pushed out. And as such, it took a lot to earn and still does to this day with a lot of the older guys. But it took a lot to earn trust.
I can imagine.
And then it took even more to earn respect. And it took a lot to make your way into the wrestling business. Mm-hmm. Then it took a lot more to make your way into the locker room. And then it took a lot more to be what within the wrestling business is called one of the boys. Mm-hmm. And, you had to earn it. And again, we're very creative, very eclectic, very eccentric, and also some would say sadistic, but it really.
I don't mean to laugh. I'm just thinking.
But
you don't think about that, but that's obvious.
But they really not. They weren't. It was one. They wanted to ensure that you weren't going to jeopardize what they were, trying to feed their family with. And two, you kind of, I hate to say it, when you are every day of your life, you're in some kind of pain. You kind of get a little desensitized to others. You're not as empathetic. You're not. You're not experiencing it in the same manner as everyone else does.
This is a perfect time to quick segue. I was hoping we'd find a moment where this would fit into the Moxie Talk. There's that movie Mickey Rourke did, I guess 10 or 20 years, called The Wrestler.
Yeah.
Did you see guys kind of live out that scenario that he did? I think he had a daughter and he didn't know her. I don't want to give this movie away, but is that a familiar scene you've seen? I was afraid of that.
Yeah, but not just in wrestling.
Sure.
I've seen that in all walks of life where people allow what they do to become who they are. I struggled with it at one point because it's easy if you're very passionate about what it is you're trying to pursue, of letting that literally become your identity. And whenever that happens, it's going to eat you alive. You're not going to win. It's going to destroy you and ruin you. And there are a lot of people that have to balance that.
Sure.
Not just in wrestling, but people, executives, and that are high-powered or politicians or celebrities.
They don't want it to end. We talked about that before. They don't know how to end it.
They don't
properly.
Because they don't know who to be.
Yeah.
I deal with that too a little bit. Still to this day, because it's like, I've been doing this for 41 years. What do I do when I get done? That's the hardest part, is your reason for living. When your reason for living ends, but you still got to go on and live.
Yes.
That's tough. And everybody, you just go do something. Well, of course I could, but let's imagine that tomorrow I'm no longer in wrestling. Well, I'm going to go in and apply for a job. What have you been doing for the last 41 years? Well, fake fighting other men in my underwear. Wow. Well, we've got a spot for you right here. You can be on the board of directors.
Right, exactly. So I love this question. You've been all over the world. I think you said 35, 40 countries. Yeah. You've traveled quite extensively by comparison to a lot of our guests. And you're driving your own bus. If you were granted 2 weeks right today, or you gave yourself 2 weeks, 14 calendar days, 10 business days, ideally no technology, money's not an object, just to make the point of the question. Where do you go? What do you do? Who do you take with you?
Well, I'm going to take my wife.
Okay.
She'd get hot,
Jessica.
But no, she's awesome to travel with. I've never gotten a chance or an opportunity to go to Russia, so that would be an amazing experience. I've never gotten a chance or an opportunity to go to Turkey. China, I would love to go to China to see it, to experience it.
Now, would you be in a hotel? I don't want to get too long-winded on this, but what part of it would you take in? Would you do I don't want to call it glamping, that's not fair, because we all tour and travel and we stay in nicer places.
I don't mind, when I would travel, we went, when I first came to WWF at that time in 1995, we went, one of the first international things we did was we went to Germany for 19 days straight. But I would purposely get up every morning, and we were this was just a few years after they tore the Berlin Wall down.
Okay, yeah.
So we were the first international entertainment company to go over into Eastern Germany.
Okay. And
it was fascinating because in '95 there were still what you think were chuck holes were holes in the roads from where they dropped the bombs in World War II.
Yeah.
And some of those towns, it's different than it is here in America, because some of those towns were in existence for hundreds of years. And so, you'd be downtown and you'd see bullet holes in windows and upstairs and things like that in Dresden, Germany, where the war had taken place. And they just had never, the economy in Eastern Germany was so bad, they just never had the money to reinvest and repair a lot of that damage. But I would get up every morning and I would go out and I would literally make it a point to sightsee and walk around and go places that typically you wouldn't. I'd just do it by myself, and I've done that in Japan. The first time I went to Japan, I literally started teaching myself Japanese so I could take the trains to go to different areas in Tokyo, and I just go off, and find stuff and get you. And it's amazing what you can see and do, and just I've been, like I said, I've been very blessed. I've been on 5 or 6 different safaris in South Africa.
Wow.
I've been, at a Boomba, which is almost like a luau in the plains of Africa. And
Well, the way things are going, you might be able to still do all of
I
it.
I hope so.
You
But
got chapters left in you.
yeah, but there, a week of that, if I could just go out and go places and see some things and experience, because there's so many things in the world that you just never get a chance to see it all. You know, you just want to go see more.
It's a big planet.
Yeah,
That's for sure.
there's a lot.
Well, so I
of
tell my
stuff.
son, I was like, don't stay here. He's a little young. When he gets a little older, I'm going to,
Yeah.
don't stay here, go.
Get out. I think really what we should do, honestly, like in this country especially, it's not the same as it is in Europe, and because you can just get on a train and go from France to Belgium and Germany, and and there's, in each place is a different culture. What Americans don't understand is that culturally we're all different too. Northeast is completely a different culture than it is in the Midwest. Midwest is completely different than it is in the Southeast. The West is different. Southwest is different than the West. Northwest is completely different culture. We assume because we're one country that we're all exactly the same. We're not even close. But go see this country. There is so much here that you could go and see.
I've driven cross country twice. I tell everyone,
I've
you
done
got
that
to
a
do
couple
that.
times too. Yeah,
Ideally alone, if you're comfortable enough with yourself, because you learn a lot about yourself. And
sure do.
it's a big planet. You're a little. If you could have a dinner alone with anyone, living or deceased, who would it be and why? And it could be someone famous, not famous.
Oh, probably my dad.
Okay.
Probably my dad. Get one more chance.
Yeah.
That would be awesome.
Yeah, it would. Would you have a buffet, or would it be like steak and potatoes?
Steak and potatoes.
Yeah, I got you.
Get a good steak.
Yeah.
Nothing better than.
No, if it's done right.
Yeah.
Sauteed onions.
I don't like onions.
Oh, okay.
Ugh.
All right.
But good
The
steak.
guy can come off the top rope, but he doesn't like onions. That's cool, man.
Yeah. I don't like to eat what my food eats, So
There
as
you
far as
go.
vegetables or salad, things like that, I try to avoid it. So, it disrupts the food chain.
Sure.
And I mean, if we as a species have spent this much time in evolution to get to the top of it, why am I going to ruin it?
You might have a stand-up comedian career too.
Well,
right?
I've been doing that.
Yes, you have.
I honestly have.
Yeah, you have. You have.
Yeah, I've done some stand-up comedy dates, and they're fun. I mean, I have a good time up there. And the most awkward one was just a couple months ago. My mom attended it.
Oh.
And proceeded to tell me before I got on stage, well, I've got earplugs, so if I hear anything, I'm just going to stick them in. And I went, thanks, Mom.
If you could have written a letter to the younger Al Snow, or your original name,
Yeah.
what would you have told him?
Just go for it. Stop being scared. There is no such. I honestly think there's no such thing as failure. I don't think there's no way to fail. There's just not. The only time you fail is if you just quit. But if you quit, it's because that story stopped, and now you get to go tell another story. So you didn't fail. And I don't understand. I really have been, as I've gotten older, trying to struggle. What's success?
Yeah.
Just what is it? Because everybody talks about it. Everybody says, "Oh, he's successful. Oh, she's successful." Why? Because they make money. That doesn't make them successful. Oh, they got to the top. Okay, but do you think that that's a success? What makes success? How about if you just are doing what you love to do and you're having a great time doing it and enjoying it? Then I think that's success. Does that mean that you might make more money than me? Yeah, you probably do. I mean, I own a wrestling company in Louisville, Kentucky, so we're going to go on a limb and say you probably do make more money than I do. But I bet you don't have near as much fun as I do.
Yeah.
I bet you don't get to have as many opportunities to be as creative as I do.
Yeah.
I bet you don't laugh near as much as I do, And yeah, there are lots of times I want to choke somebody until they literally defecate their pants, but...
Such a great note to wind down on.
but I wouldn't change it for the world. How many people could sit and tell you honestly, look you in the eye and go, right now, I wouldn't change anything. I mean, well, I would like to make more money. I'd like to be more attractive, but I'm just stuck with what I got, so.
You're doing all right, man.
Yeah.
So you're our 434th guest. No one's gotten out of the rocket seat, hot seat, as I call it, in all of those Moxie Talks interviews. This is our signature question.
Sure.
You know, God forbid you walk out of here today, the studio, and it's your last day on earth. How do you want to be remembered by family, friends, you know, co-wrestlers, co-promoters, owners? I could go on down the list.
I just want to be remembered.
You will be.
Oh, that's it. That's the one thing we all work so hard to do, and we don't even realize that we're trying to do it. We all just want to be remembered, because when you pass away from existence, nice way of saying you die, you croak, assume room temperature. When you do, you're still alive. You're still present, because somebody's still mentioning your name. You don't really die until the last person says your name for the last time. And I do everything I can every day to make sure that's going to go on as long as possible, long after I'm gone.
It's very true.
Somehow, some way, even if they're cussing me incessantly, they still talk about me.
Yeah.
Which means I'm still there.
And it's true, having lost parents,
Yeah.
they're right there.
They're right. As long as you mention their name, they're always there. When you stop saying a person's name, that's because you really die two times. You physically die, but you really don't completely die until no one mentions your name ever again. I'm going to do everything I can to make sure people are going to mention my name one way or another, some reason.
Well, there's more chapters, man. So I think, Al, you've got...
I told you, 33 years.
Yeah.
I'm tapping out. 93, I'm done.
Man, I'm humbled and honored you took your valuable time to come
No,
on
I
here.
really appreciate this. I really enjoyed it.
If you've enjoyed today's discussion and it's inspired you, we would love to hear from you. And if you know someone who has Moxie and a story worth sharing, let's talk. Simply visit our website, MoxieTalk.com, or type Moxie Talk with Kirt Jacobs on all your social media platforms. Until next time, I'm Kirt Jacobs. Thanks for watching.